right, we got a Space Tomato video titled "Player-Made Contracts Will Fuel Star Citizen's Dynamic Economy. Quantum is now Star Sim confirmed." This is, I think, the single most important thing around everything that they're building, in terms of the dynamic economy and stuff like that, is their intentions and the fact that they said, player driven, things like that, that it seems to be more focused in that direction than what we had previously heard from our boy Tony Z, which sounded like basically it was constantly just NPCs driving everything. So big shift in their communication. Obviously, no content has been made in this direction, in either direction. So there's no shift in the actual game design or anything like that, just how they're communicating their economy. So let's watch this video and see what Space Tomato has to say, because he's kind of the quantum guy. He loves this stuff. So
there is something special about doing something in a game and knowing it affects other players. And I'm not talking about like killing a couple enemies and making the path clearer, or, blowing somebody's ship up from the inside.
I mean, that also feels good, right?
Side. Yeah, jerk. No, I'm talking about the general chaos of an MMO, being able to just do things in the game and know it affects the way the game plays. More specifically, though, I'm talking about player-made missions. And in today's Feature Watch, we're going to talk about player-made missions and the quantum economy, or Star Sim as they're starting to call it, and how these things are actually going to really affect the way this game flows. If you haven't been to a Feature Watch before, this is a small series where I just kind of take a topic from the last week of Star Citizen's development and give you a little bit of a deeper dive on the history and the plans for that in a more casual setting than the Tomato Talks. So
yeah, it's hard to know the plans for this. And the history seems to say it might be that it was something else. Like, it's hard to be like, was Tony talking about this? Or was what Tony talked about something entirely different than what we heard on SCL last week?
Player-made missions are something that players have gotten a little bit nervous about over the last couple months, mainly because in 3.23, passenger transport beacons basically disappeared. Now, we don't know if that's a glitch or not, but this has made people a little more nervous about the beacon system taking a step back, but it's not. In fact, it's been acknowledged in the...
It doesn't mean it's not temporarily. It doesn't mean that this is going to happen anytime soon. So, yeah, I'll let it cook, but once he speaks, I have serious concerns.
Last Star Citizen Live that the system is, much like the economy, just not in a great place.
Player contracts and job boards. Will players ever be able to set up contracts to have cargo or items hauled by other players?
So we do have player beacons, and I know what that current state of that is, but that is
Nick?
a system.
What is the current state? Go ahead, admit it.
Worked perfectly.
It's a feature, but that's something which we. It's like the economy. It's
non-existent. Oh, sorry. Carry on, Nick.
This was really unfortunate too, because I love Elliot, but it got derailed where Jared felt like he had to jump in, and like, it was funny, right? But then Nick never got the opportunity to really finish what he was saying. And I think that this was such an important conversation to have with the community, and we didn't get the most out of it that we probably could have.
Okay.
Yeah, this is pre-recorded, and if that still makes it into the show, know that I don't value my job.
Yeah, Elliot's still working at the company. Okay, it's good, yeah. But ultimately, this answer we got from Nick after Elliot's little interruption was pretty good confirmation that player-made missions are very important to the game.
To answer the question, Elliot, the beacon system is something which provides for players to contract other players. And it's a system we will be looking to expand upon in the future. And personally, I think that this side of the economy is fundamental, given that we are having a hybrid economy. So player-driven
Yeah.
system
Yeah, that's
sustained.
Space Tomato. Clip it.
Player-driven system. But again, Elliot spoke over him.
Tomato. Clip it.
We got you. While players won't exclusively
Clip it.
Hold on.
Fundamental, given that we are having a hybrid economy. So player-driven
Yeah.
system
Yeah, that's
sustained.
Space Tomato. Clip it.
Player-driven systems. What? What was the last word he said? I have no idea. I still, to this day, have played that 50 times. Have no idea, but maybe you guys can help. Yeah, it was very mumbled, but I don't know, like if it's player systems. Yeah, it doesn't matter. But like what I was trying to figure out is player-driven. Is it above the NPC-driven, right? And for me, actually, player contracts are big. But more importantly is player hubs, trading hubs, places where players come together and where items and things from all around the galaxy come together. Yeah, it will always be hybrid, and that's a good thing. I think later on, I'm sure Tomato will put this in. Later on, he goes to describe what they mean by hybrid and how the NPCs will take part in that. So I'll let it cook for a little while, and if it doesn't get addressed, remind me and I'll address it.
We got you.
Like Vegeta in SC, yeah, you can use Eve, but you can literally use any game, right? Any MMO has that place where players naturally became drawn to for whatever reason, and it became the place where everyone hung out. It became the place where people were spamming, selling, dragon or horse or weapons or armor or whatever, right? Like it literally could be Grimhex, right? It could be. Like it could be anywhere. It's what the players end up deciding that it becomes, right? It's the game company might set it up so naturally it becomes that, but it doesn't have to be like a Vegeta or anything like that. It could be Seraphim. It could be crashed Orison on Daymar or something like that. Hopefully it would happen naturally. I think that would be cool. But to have the ability to not just post contracts on an open job board, but also to be able to buy and sell items in the game in that way would be, I think, really, really helpful.
While players won't exclusively control the economy in this game, allowing players to make missions for other people is going to be really good at keeping players engaged with each other and like keeping the game alive. And if you think about it, this is pretty key for solo players. If you didn't want to get involved in a huge group or sign up to get your friends online whenever you wanted to go do something, but you still wanted to take part in some of that bigger scaled game,
there's crafting or no, there's crafting planned
gameplay, now you can do it without ever having to talk to people. You can just take missions that are assigned by other players, benefit from the fact that it's an MMO, but not necessarily have to go and get into a group. It's also really
Exactly. And the thing about Star Citizen, more than any other game I've ever played, is the interacting with a group and trying to both communicate, be prepared, be on the same page, have a ship that's available. Because there's so much more going on with Star Citizen, more tactile, more inputs that a player has to put in just simply to fly their ship, the need for something like this is actually greater than I thought it would be, right? Just going out there and being able to take a contract of trading, let's say, and just going and doing it would be cool. It really makes sense in the trading sense of the contracts. I'm trying to think of what other contracts would make more sense from the point that Tomato's making, because every other one seems a little bit more multiplayer, but like refueling contracts, medical contracts, things like that are engaging and are cool, but the hey, I'm just kind of trying to go out there and do my thing is it's really only trading that I can think of for at least the moment. What I'd like to see, and this could be a player driven one, but it can also be like an automated NPC driven one. I've talked a lot about this. I really want to see this be a thing. Is your ship explodes, you spawn back at the hospital, and you claim your ship. What I really want to see happen is when a player claims their ship, it creates a contract from the insurance company that that player is working with, assuming that there are separate companies. I'm assuming there'll just be one. But a contract is created, and you go out with your SRV or other ship with a tractor beam, and you bring that ship back to a certain base, maybe within a region of some kind. You could repair it and get more. You could, you could choose to take some of the components if you wanted. You can replace it, whatever. I don't know what the options would be, but what I really want to see is, say, Space Tomato's an evil pirate, as he is. He blows up my ship, and he loots the cargo. He loots all of the components and the guns. The contract is created by me. I put out the contract, and then, I don't know, Dares Daryl in chat, he's the last person who typed, he goes and takes the insurance contract, and he uses his SRV, brings back the ship. All the ship is the hull. That's what I get back. I might get some money back to replace the components, but I don't get the components back. But if Tomato happened to leave a few components in the ship, and some guns, let's say, I get those back. That is very much the Escape from Tarkov model of insurance, and I would love to see that on top of, so the way I want to see insurance, plus the way I want to see these contracts get created for players, where they can kind of play solo and go about that. You hate the Tarkov insurance? Okay, you can hate it, but let's I don't want to get away from the subject that we're on today, but if there's going to be crafting in this game, and if there's going to be a player-run or player-driven economy, you have to lose components. Because you have to lose components, you have to, like, ships, you're kind of probably not going to lose, especially if you paid for them, so you have to be able to lose components. So we have to go down a route similar to that. Otherwise, what are we crafting for? What are we doing any of these things for if you're never going to lose anything, right? If we have the current system that we have today, you don't have much of a driven part of a player-driven economy. So you can hate it all you want, but it kind of needs to be a thing.
Important, though, because it shows us the direction of the economy that's planned to be pretty dynamic and actually changing based on what players are doing, thus allowing you to affect other people's gameplay.
You should just get money? Yes. I think I did state that. You should get money. Maybe not all the money, but if the thing that I think is really special about the Escape from Tarkov model is, if nobody took your shit, you get it back. If somebody took your shit, you didn't. That's the difference, and I do like that.
This is actually pretty in line with what we've seen from previous quantum economy demonstrations, which we will get to in a little bit. Now, later in the same talk, it's actually...
Excuse me, Star Sim economy, thank you.
Actually specifically mentioned by Elliot that there will be chances for refineries or other locations to receive goods based on your cargo running route or your mining or whatever you're doing, and transform those goods into another good or a product, and then another mission would be generated somewhere in the verse that would require a cargo hauler to come pick up those goods and take them somewhere else, like a storefront or another factory. Now, we don't know.
Yeah, and I think Tomato's going to put a little caveat here. This is not going to happen in 324. Everything in 324 was very static. We heard his name is really hard for me to say, and I can't remember it. But the guy that was on SCL, Lauren, something like that. He made 400 individual missions, right? It's very static for the moment. The stuff that he did, and I think it was Connor, the work that he did is what will inform what Space Tomato just said at some point.
Know which location would generate that mission, but this is a pretty important part of the economic chain that they had planned out for Quantum.
Exactly.
But, yeah, we're going to have missions where you have to bring resources to a location, and then naturally that location would then take those resources, produce something, and then another location would then consume what that location produces, and that makes the what do you call it, the hauling sort of mission.
This was actually reflect.
And that's the Connor work that they've been talking about. Is it just needs to make sense, and that's what they're kind of doing right now. Is they're making sense of the world that we're playing, that had never really made sense up to this point.
In the March monthly report, if you go back and look, it talked about how the economy team identified producers, transformers, and sinks for all resources.
Stuck.
Essentially categorizing all the locations, outposts, factories, cities, distribution centers within the economic chain. This is the Quantum system, soon to be officially known as StarSim, it seems. They keep saying it.
StarSim?
He's so mad. He's so mad because he's made about 57 Twitter posts about how people say Quantum wrong.
Constantly.
StarSim.
Everywhere.
StarSim.
And this is the overall economic
I don't think he's
simulation that's meant to actually make Star Citizen interesting. Back in 2019, Tony Z, who, yes, is still working at the company as...
But here's the deal. It doesn't make it interesting if it doesn't impact the player. That's the thing, is everything Tony has said, everything Tomato has said, everything Nick has said, everything that Elliot has said, is designing the world to make sense. It's not necessarily to make it fun to play in or interesting or any of those other things. I think I have been standing on my hill that I'm willing to die on, and it's might be only my hill that I'm willing to die on, but I don't think you have an interesting or fun game if the things you're crafting aren't super meaningful. If the ships, like crafting ships, make sense. If the bases they got to be more than just a place to hang out, right? MMOs always have competition in them, whether you're competing with yourself or others, or org versus org and this versus that. But those things and all the things in the world that are going around and being traded, the reason people are trading them is because they need them. You need them. And I don't see as many needs in Star Citizen as there should be. I think we see it with railguns a little bit, with certain, like, very small sections of the community. And that's about it. I mean, I think you see it with, like, certain quantum drives at the start of a wipe, but there's no way to fill that need for players. Players just go and buy them, and then they never lose them, right? So there's no things being sold out at stations. There's no, hey, go play the game and get better things. So they are making the world make sense, but they are not making the game we play in yet. And that's okay, because I think the game needs to make sense before they bring in and start really changing stuff. So just to be clear, it may sound like I'm not happy with anything that's in this video. No. I think they're taking the right steps in the right direction. It's just, hopefully we get to what I'm looking for sooner than later.
Confirmed by a couple of friends who ran into him back in May, did give us a good preview of the Quantum system, or what they had planned for it back then. Now, it is a frustrating watch because it's taken so long to get here, but let's look back at those demonstrations.
We're going to add a little bit of interest to the system by adding an aluminum mine to Delamar. So now we're going to go ahead and add an aluminum refinery to Crusader. That refinery, it wants to build up a stockpile of aluminum, and in order to do that, it needs some raw aluminum ore, and thus it's willing to pay for it. And so the Quanta are seizing upon that economic opportunity, heading out to Delamar, doing the work, extracting that ore, and taking it back to the refinery. And this will continue until it's full. So what we're going to do now is add a factory. But before we do that, let's head on over to the power plant formula. And you can see here that building a power plant just like refining ore requires something. It requires 10 workers working for a duration of 60 ticks. And it also notably requires 2 units of refined aluminum ore in order to produce 1 power plant.
It's going to be more complicated than that, I promise.
They'll actually require ships. Ships require engines. And so all of a sudden there's a real demand for how many power plants do you need? How many ships do you need? It all follows those same logical equations.
While this process could include players or AI, this is still pretty consistent messaging on what they want the economy to do and how they want it to change based on what players and AI are doing on the micro scale. The economy itself was originally meant to be a 10-to-1 ratio of AI to players in the game, so that players could have an effect on what's going on, but maybe not completely screw up planetary economies.
Yeah, and it still can be that.
Like, nobody wants there to be an overabundant supply of human waste on Hurston, but there's going to be an org that's trying to make that happen. This whole idea is supposed to allow for price changes, resource droughts, or even an overabundance of goods, like human waste. The kind of events that might push you to stockpile your commodities until you'll get better profit for selling them, or run a specific trade route on a specific date because there may be a blockade. Not talking about blockade runner, get out of here, go, shoot. But this...
No, I mean, that is literally what that's the whole design around blockade runner, is that that is meant to be like popping up in multiple systems all the time. Like, oh, this place has been blockaded by pirates. The value of those items and the need for those items to go to those places just went up by a lot. So now it's like, all right, well, we need to go kill those NPCs or players and then get those goods in there to make the maximum profit.
Still allows for there to be guardrails for the economy to self-correct through the simulation rather than having to depend on players to go and fix it eventually. This also means if there are no players to take responsibility in some certain geographic part of the game, eventually the game will still do that for you, like a medical beacon, a transportation beacon, or an escort.
I don't know about the medical beacons or transportation because, we don't know how our AI are yet, or if we can trust them to actually do those things, but we certainly hope they will. And I think that's the idea behind it, is if players are not mining those locations, like the titanium mine, if players are not taking advantage of certain things within a system because they didn't know that they were there, or let's say Stanton eventually becomes dead. I kind of hope it does. It won't, but the idea of, as we get new systems, players finding that, Stanton isn't that cool. These other systems are way better to hang out in. Will Stanton just die economically? No. They'll have these NPCs in background simulation keeping it alive as if there are players there. But if we are there, there doesn't need to be as many doing that, hopefully. That's how I see it.
Scored. Chris Roberts says this much back in 2015, I believe, on a Reverse the Verse episode.
Even if we...
Oh my God, I can't believe we're... like this. Yeah.
Have millions of players playing the game. As you move around, you are probably more likely to encounter more AI than you are players, because we need it to have a world feel alive, which is one of the big differences with what the Star Citizen setup is, building this alive world. And to do it properly, we can't rely on the player base, because at a certain time of night there may not be that many players, and then another time.
At this time, just to be clear, at this time they were still saying that there wasn't going to be any crafting in the game.
So that's why we're
I don't believe anything that was said at this time.
The player base is going to be no more than 10% of the overall sort of population.
Scope has changed,
and so at that point, most of the people, by the very definition, if that's the case, 9 out of 10 of the people, ships that you will meet will be AI. There will not be players.
We don't know how closely this is all still intended to be a part of the game, as it
I don't even think they can do it.
Hasn't been explicitly stated that we're going to be.
That was before Procedural Planets, right? Anything before Procedural Planets, any idea, throw it out the window. Throw it completely out the window. I don't even think they were talking out of their ass, Icy. I think that it changed when they made procedural planets. You cannot have as many ships on a screen as you used to, or whatever, right? Like, everything changed.
A 10% part of the game since then, but that's kind of what we've been acting on, and the simulations that they've shown with Quantum definitely give the idea that AI are going to be a huge part of the traffic, the missions, the people you encounter, and the things that you do, so that you don't really have to worry about the unpredictability of players. Yeah, we like to break things. And this brings us back to those player...
Anyone else uncomfortable with seeing the ascent of Tomato's PC? Yeah. That is kind of weird, right? You usually don't see the back of someone's PC when they put it on their screen. It is a bit unorthodox. It does make me uncomfortable.
They could go much further than just commodity orders to a new location. We're talking data orders to survey a planet or find points of interest for you and your org to go and then exploit. Delivery mission.
How about this, Tomato? From a economy standpoint, this was again a pre-2015 or pre-2016 pre-procedural planet conversation. Data can't travel between jump points, so the economy sim and stuff like that has to be moved by players, right? So I'm sure it'll happen by NPCs, but it's also a thing that can happen by players.
Vehicles transported to a certain location.
It's pretty
or
crazy.
Simple requests for good engineers, turret gunners, or deckhands that could help you build out your crew when you don't have any friends. But in order for this to work, they're going to have to rely pretty heavily on that reputation system that has been oh so slow to build out in order to make players even feel comfortable doing all of this. And also, I really hope that they do have actual job boards or public places on space stations where you can go and find your local missions. That'd be a nice touch, but I bet a lot of people would want to just use their mobi-glass. We'll see what they do. But the point I wanted to hit here was that the economy is still in the works in a big way. Star Sim, Quantum, whatever you want to call it, just not Quanta, is still heavily in the works. And as we covered earlier this year with the video about Tony Z and the whole simulation, I would go check that out. There's more detail there. It's something they want to rely on for a lot of the dynamic gameplay in the game. And they've covered this in monthly reports and various talks throughout this year. So that's not going anywhere. We just don't know the details of it, and I don't know when we will. Honestly, that doesn't feel like something that's going to be very significant until after server meshing is in a good place, but this year they've talked about it way more than any other year. So I do think with the economy team working, the way they've been balancing prices across the monthly reports, talking about boosting mission payouts and figuring out how much risk versus reward gets you what you're paid, things are starting to get at least dialed in to be tuned into this system. I can't tell you it's going to be here soon, but it's...
Yeah, they are... What is refreshing about what we see is not that what they're doing right now will be fun in 324, is that they're building for the future, or they're building for the 1.0 type of economy. Whether or not we'll get there, like, my chat is so annoying. They'll just be like, well, that's never going to happen, or something like that. Okay, great. Then why are we here? Right? It may never happen. It may never happen the way Chris Roberts said it would in 2015. I think everybody knows that. But getting to something that at least makes sense versus something that doesn't is a much better situation than
definitely still coming. And this is ultimately good because it gives players the ability to affect the game's space, and give other people something to do based on your own gameplay. And honestly, a lot of you have bought tons of ships that you probably don't know exactly what to do with when you're just out there playing casually. Maybe this will give us the ability to loan out ships to people to run missions for us. Start your own cargo company and just loan out all your cargo haulers to people who get a little bit of the cut when they deliver stuff, and you just go off and do your own thing. I don't know, there's a lot of possibilities with this, with player-made missions, and the fact that the economy is going to be dynamic, and I'm loving it. But that's it for this feature.
When you hear that we could build ships, I hear that we can lose them. I don't think we're going to be giving them to anybody, but he might be onto something.
I do want to say I released a video recently about the Turbulent Studio, and I would like to make note that there are things in that video that are a little bit incorrect in terms of who's doing what in the company. It's a little hard to get it all exactly right based on just Inside Star Citizens and Star Citizen Live, but I appreciate the CIG folks who have reached out to kind of correct some of that stuff, and I hope to make more videos that talk a little bit about the teams and what they've been doing. So if you are at CIG and you want to clarify anything or let us know anything more, obviously don't get in trouble. My DMs are open. I hope you guys have been enjoying this series. Please let me know more of what you would like to see from it. I'm just picking topics from the previous week, but there are all these little things that might get past me. So if you see something that's cool, hop on our Discord server.
Jump
Come
points.
chat it out. Let me know. Or join us live for our deep dives where we go into way more detail on these kinds of things than we do here. In fact, we did cover this episode just recently, and I'll have that up on the second channel for you. Anyways, hope you enjoyed this one and learned something new, and I'll catch you in the next.
That was good. I think, like, I do feel like we're in fairly good hands as far as where we're going with this stuff. I love seeing the, or hearing the words player driven. They just got to make the move to actual player driven. And hearing and doing, we know, are two very, very different things. And we have been hearing many things for many years, but they have not been doing many things for many years. We, at the very least, see them making the changes to the world's economy in the sense of this location does this and accepts these kind of contracts. This location does that and puts out these kind of contracts, and so on and so forth. So they're getting there extremely slowly, but there is action, and that's good.